Awesome. So I have a question for you guys. Why did you apply for Gaia's Cultivate Fellowship? What is it that you hoped to get from your participation in this program? And I'd like to start with Derek.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening from some places. It's always an exciting opportunity to participate in Islam. Thank you very much for the repeat invite, Jenny and team. Yeah, so that's very interesting. Gaia actually, to me and my team, it presented a unique learning opportunity. As you know, in our activity, we actually embed a lot of gender and climate aspects. So having qualitative research, qualitative inquiry training is always very, very important to see the evolving nature of the body and the subject of qualitative inquiry. So to see how we best integrate these issues that are sensitive, like gender and climate, I felt like being the only qualified person in my team on the field, I felt I needed to get broader perspective from other colleagues doing something similar. So this fellowship actually brought that opportunity to the fore and was shared with us, and we applied, I and Joanita, and we are very excited, still are, to be fellows. Then also a peculiar kind of data challenge that was going on. We had a lot of quantitative data, and we had limited efforts to collect qualitative. Whenever we used to collect it, was always haphazard to just explain what the qualitative data was about. But this presented an opportunity to give us some advantage of maybe collecting qualitative data before better, and sometimes we look at the quantitative data to validate what we have just seen. So that was also something that the fellowship actually contributed to our interest in joining. Then, of course, the collaboration. This was off the back of a meeting we had in Naivasha. We interacted with a lot of colleagues, and somehow I always ended up in adaptive management sessions, and qualitative inquiry was very central to it. So when this opportunity presented itself, I and Juanita, who were present at that particular meeting too, saw an opportunity to apply and compete for the fellowship. It was not our first time to try, but we were successful this time around. For me, that was what was it encouraged me to apply with my colleague Juanita. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Thank you so much. Joanita, I'm also just curious from your perspective, what was interesting to you about this? Why did you decide to get involved?
Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. I don't know whether there is anyone in a good night zone. I greet you all. Once again, I'm Joanita, like Jenny has said, and I work with Derek. On the Graduate in Resilience activity, I am a program advisor on the side, not directly with activity, but I am always there because of my background in agriculture and nutrition. So I formed that other combination of the FSN, food security and nutrition. So I was added onto the activity because of that background and knowledge. However, with APSI Foundation, I serve as a program advisor within, and I work directly within the program and design unit. So when you hear my background, my training, you don't hear, I'm Derek. Derek is male. He will tell you about the numbers and what the numbers mean. I'm not a youth specialist, neither am I a gender specialist. However, while I'm doing my job of writing, most especially proposals, but also advising on our different projects and activities, I have to understand the why bit of things. But many times we have the what with the quantitative, like Derek has said. Yet when you're writing, you have to go in depth. And also in my interaction, for example, with Graduate in Resilience activity, while we started at the start, there is a time we had a very huge number, for example, of malnourished children, and majority were girls. So I remember BHA asking, why are majority girls? We didn't have an answer. We started saying, but in every population, girls are majority. that wasn't a sufficient answer. So me joining this Cultivate Fellowship was to help me understand how to dig deeper into issues, how to understand them away from the surface value of the numbers, how to explain, for example, when we are building a proposal in depth, why things are happening a particular way. And like also Derek has said, to also interact with other RIFSAs, how people are integrating youth, gender, how they are understanding in depth issues that are affecting their different activities or interventions. So basically that is it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Charles, I'm curious from your perspective, working in South Sudan, what made you interested in participating in Cultivate?
Thank you, Jenny, and good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. So for us, the interest was mainly coming from the project that we're implementing here in South Sudan with respect to the pathways to resilience. This was a resilience project. It was actually a 3-year project which started in 2020 and it ended in November 2023. So along the way, as we were implementing the project, we realized and observed that 2 issues were coming out to be topical with our engagement of our donors and the community that we were serving. One of the 2 talking points that we identified was gender and youth programming. So as a country program, these were the building blocks of our projects. And secondly, our donor was very much interested in understanding the impact of our activities with respect to gender and youth programming. So the Gaia opportunity came to be very handy in terms of putting us in a position to start a process that would answer those questions. And we went through the opportunity, got registered and participated in it. And not only did we get novel ideas in terms of gender and youth programming out of this, but also with the results of this fed into the country strategy that we were working on, so that we could pick which items are key and central to the development of the country strategy for CRC in South Sudan. So yeah, I would say those were the 3 overall driving factors that got us interested in participating on the Gaia activity. Over to you, Jenny.
Great, thank you, Charles. So now we know why you guys were interested in participating. Let's hear a little bit more about the process and what you did as a part of the Cultivate Fellowship. Can you just maybe share some highlights from the process of designing and conducting the Qualitative Inquiry Project? Maybe you could share your learning question or the process you undertook to identify learning question. How did you guys collect and reflect on the data that you got? So I'm going to start with you, Charles. Can you share just a bit of the process?
Thank you so much. So for us, it was a requirement from the Gaia team that prior to participation on the workshop that was held in Kenya, we needed to at least come up with our thoughts and ideas around our topic. And to respond to my submission earlier on, our topic was around finding out how the 6 sectors of the pathways to resilience impacted on the youth and gender on our throughout our activities. So initially, our topic was kind of like general, and was speaking to the traditional way we have always done things as a country program. But as we went through the processes with support from Gaia in terms of the new tools, in terms of interacting with others as well, we realized that we needed to tweak our topic to ensure that it speaks to what we wanted to achieve at the end of the day. So we got a lot of support in terms of tweaking the topic, in terms of selecting the tools for use, and analyzing the data. Yeah, one experience that I would want to share is we really were kind of like overwhelmed in terms of the data that we saw coming our way from the data collection processes. And we managed to go through the processes with support from the GAIA team, which was very supportive throughout the processes. The second thing that might be interesting for me to share with you is the fact that in terms of the selection of the tool and the training that we did, it was really a new subject altogether, moving away from the traditional data collection methods to administering a new tool that we had not done so in South Sudan. So yeah, those are the experiences that I would want to share with you for now.
I'm curious, I actually have a follow-up question for you, Charles, because I'm curious, you said that the qualitative data was coming in and it was quite overwhelming. So how did you go about making sense of that data with your team? How did you guys break that down and help the team to review it and come up with some ideas and learning from it?
Thank you for that question. So the first thing when we realized that we have so much data on our hands was to try and separate the different aspects of the data into common areas. And that was the first thing. Then the second thing really focused on connecting those little bits of pieces of information in different, coming from different counties into one cohesive story. So this is where we got a lot of support from the GAIA team in interpreting what was coming out, as well as coming out with, I would say, the sense-making processes, which allowed us to really make a comprehensive and solid story to inform our strategy development processes, to do a presentation to our donor at the end of our project, as well as the building capacity of the team in terms of administering the new tools that we used. Over to you.
Great, thank you, Charles. Joanita, can you share a little bit about the process that you guys undertook?
So I will start with the question we came to the fellowship with. Then Derek will also expound on the process. Like Charles has said, it was one of the requirements for us to come to the fellowship. You had to have a learning question for your qualitative inquiry. And good enough, we had back with our activity, Graduate Resilience, we have what we call the learning agenda, where we have collected a number of learning questions and prioritized, but they still remain so many. And we have tried even contacting GAIA before for funding to study this on the side. Although we were not successful before, so we were happy to come to the fellowship and learn and come and do it maybe ourselves after they have taught us. So they did not give us fish, but they taught us how to catch fish. And we are very grateful. So among these questions, we chose, I remember I was very excited and I overrode in Sibira, Derek, when we were choosing. I wanted to understand what the spousal role was for households to graduate or not to graduate. Our activity works with the graduation approach, where households are supposed to graduate from their current situation to self-reliance and resilience and things being better generally. And we use a number of domains for us to graduate you as a household at the end of the day. And over at first, we implemented in 2 cohorts. Our activity has been 7 years. We ended touch point with the participants last year in December, though we still continue with other processes as we wind up. So for the first cohort, we worked with the households for 24 months. However, for the second cohort, we learned that by around the 18th month, they begin to drop out. But by the time we say that you have graduated, you should have hit the graduation mark thrice, because we measure every quarter.
ahead.
Sorry, there's a microphone that's on. It's interrupting proceedings.
We assess the household on a quarterly basis. So you should meet the graduation criteria thrice consecutively. When you fall back, we say that you have retrogressed, and we will support you better to see that you get back to your feet and graduate. So there are so many shocks that come in and maybe cause households to retrogress. However, there are some households that consecutively hit this mark. So when we wanted to understand that when a household graduates, what was, because I didn't say this, we targeted mainly the woman and youth for us to enter into a household to say that they are participants. So our question wanted to look at when a household graduates, what was the role of the spouse? In this case, if it's a youth, a male youth, it can be the wife, the young lady. What was their role for the household to graduate? If it's an adult woman, what was the role of the spouse, in this case, the man, for the household to graduate? And on the other flip side, if they did not graduate, what was their role or what did they do right? So coming to, of course, I must say that while we came with this question, we had to adjust it a bit, remove some aspects, add other aspects as we learned from the fellowship. So basically, that's what we did, what we worked with as a question. I want to let Derek now go into that little bit of the process. When we came from Kenya, the fellowship, the face-to-face, what did we do next? Thanks.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Derek.
I am so sorry. I received a technical glitch on my laptop. I've been trying to reconnect. Thank you very much, Joanita. I missed the last bit of it, but I'll just try to patch it up. So with the process, we were very, very actively engaged with the Gaia group. I remember they held our hand through the whole process. So after the question was agreed upon, I remember we had a few feedback sessions in Nairobi to refine the question and come up with particular sub-questions to help us answer the question efficiently. But immediately after that, we started to draft our data collection tool. Though I wasn't with Joanita by then because we're in different stations, we kind of remained on the chat. But I used the team that I had here to actually piggyback off past questions that we had for spousal involvement and how this question can kind of fill in a knowledge gap that the other questions did not manage to articulate in the tool. So for the data tool development, we normally do, we construct a lot of tools for other processes like our standing committees, but also after aggregation criteria, we normally have a qualitative check to confirm and validate why the results appear as they are. So the team actually never struggled on that front. But one thing I would like to say that in analysis, it has always been strenuous because we always have to undergo transcription. Though the teams are getting used to it, it's still kind of a boatload of work if you consider that other activities were going on. But the Gaia group also made sure that we register for an online training course for an analysis software, Max QDA, and through a kind gesture, they allowed us to include 3 more members to the training who are primarily quantitative guys, but they appreciated all the processes of coming up with themes, doing a content analysis, and trying to use that to interpret your data. Currently, since we had a lot of backlog of past processes, we are just on the high-level analysis of the data, and there are some preliminary results that I will share maybe further on in this conversation. Thank you very much, Jenny.
Great. Thanks, Derek. You can stay on. I'm curious to know if you have had any significant challenges or barriers that you faced as you were doing this work. And maybe you could just tell us a couple of those and how you overcame them.
Okay, I'll go first. We always have a shortage in resources, because if projects had endless resources, would not really be juggling a lot of things. But first and foremost, it was the staffing challenge, and because this was a fellowship that was attended by me and Juanita, but the groundwork required a whole team effort in tool development, but also primarily data collection and analysis. So we had to juggle a lot of things to go around, but lucky for us, management had seconded our attendance in the fellowship. So we had to restructure our plan, our annual plan, to ensure that we have guy activities involved, because we even informed them that the team is attending trainings already that were not planned for the beginning of the year. So let's go on and ensure that at least we have this done. And this data partially answers our research question. Like Juanita says, we are keen to integrate gender and other cross-cutting issues like climate in our activity. So it was primarily staffing, but also the time. This fellowship requires a commitment. There are gems in this fellowship, but it requires the fellows to be committed to actually prioritize it as part of their work when they are going through the journey, because it's a learning process. And once they see the fellow committed, you can kind of translate that commitment to a team that you oversee or supervise and tell them, hey, this is part of your TORs because it's helping us answer a particular question that is going to help us adapt in engagement and intervention with our participants. Those are primarily the two challenges, and they were in our control. So we managed to overcome them, and now we are at the end tail of the fellowship. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Derek. Charles, you already mentioned the large amount of data, and we talked about that a bit. Feel free to add anything about how you overcame that. But I'm also curious if there were other challenges that you guys faced in terms of this project.
Thank you once again. Yeah, the challenges, I think, in terms of timing of the fellowship was a big issue for us, because this came like at the end of our fiscal year, which coincided with the annual reports. And that was a huge challenge for us in terms of making sure that you keep all the balls in air and deliver them accordingly. So that's one aspect. And then specifically for P2R as a project, I think the opportunity came at the tail end of our project. We tried by all means to do whatever that was possible within our limits. Fortunately, we had all the budget for this activity, but the activity or the opportunity came at the tail end of the of our project, and it would have been better if possibly we would have done this in our year 1 or year 2 kind of timeline. Yeah, the other thing that I might need to mention in terms of the challenges, although we managed to contain, is making our data collectors aware of the difference between the micro-narrative tool that we used for data collection against the traditional focus group discussion tool that we administered over. I'm saying that has been the traditional methods of data collection, one of the traditional methods of data collection. So for us, it was a big learning opportunity, a big learning curve there, to make sure that our data collectors understood the difference between the micro-narrative tool and the traditional focus group discussion. Over to you.
I have lots of follow-up questions for Charles. I have another follow-up question for you, Charles. I'm curious because you mentioned it's a challenge that this kind of came at the end of your project. Do you feel that what you learned you could carry over into a new project or the next project that you are working for, and do a qualitative inquiry in that project?
One thing for certain is that the qualitative inquiry presented an opportunity for us to use it as and when we feel we can use it. Currently, we do have a follow-on emerging project that we are implementing, and the latitude is on us now in terms of how best we can interrogate ourselves to understand emerging trends. So that's one thing. Then secondly, we were able to answer our research question in terms of contributing to the country strategy, as well as the learning agenda for the country program, and making a presentation in terms of the project, the overall project finding to our donors. So those were three key important platforms on which this impacted our activity.
Okay, and since this actually takes us into the next area that I wanted to explore, you mentioned that you answered your question. So I'm wondering if you could maybe share a learning or any kind of preliminary learning that you have become aware of as you've started the analysis process. And then I'm also wondering, is it useful for the follow-on activity or for informing your future activities?
It is useful for the follow-on activity. It's a 6 months activity that we do have, but we already have a learning question that we've developed for the project using the same techniques that we mentioned. And sharing with you some of the learning that we got out of the processes we went through was to identify the fact that there was confirmation from the data that our project participants actually improved in terms of their skills across the different sectors that we programmed. We also observed the fact that the benefits of the projects reached to neighbors, to friends and relatives. We didn't have data to validate this kind of assertion, but through these processes, we were able to get hard facts to the fact that the community, the benefits of the projects reached to more than just the immediate project participants and went further to friends, relatives and neighbors within the target communities. We also got to understand the ideas from youths in general as to which kind of interventions they like the most, and they would want us to push further in terms of supporting them. And understanding the South Sudan context per se, you would be surprised to note that, for example, on the social cohesion aspect, they felt very strongly contributing to the total peace within their communities. This we managed to pull out of this qualitative survey. Increase in incomes. This has always, even with the economic growth, this has always been a big issue to say by what percentages, by what impact, that kind of stuff. But through this qualitative inquiry, we were able to identify that 57% of our project participants were reporting increase in incomes within the different communities that we serve. The other thing that I might want to share with you is the fact that we had a DRR component which was paying cash to project participants for the work that they were doing. It was also interesting to note that cash was being invested in livestock activities, school fees and medication. These are some of the issues I think I would want to highlight with you that we collected from the qualitative inquiry that we conducted. Yeah.
Thanks, Charles. Joanita, you were very interested in participating in this from a proposal perspective and collecting data that could support some of the findings that you are getting from the quantitative data, especially as it can help you design projects. So I'm curious what it is that you guys were able to glean from your research, or what your early results are showing in terms of learning.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Jenny, Joanita has kind of been engaged in some other activities, so I took the step towards that.
Okay.
But the higher level results actually show the slight differences between households that have graduated, those in progression, and those that have retrogressed. The funny thing is that the households that have graduated, majority of the spouses, that is the men, showed no gendered roles. They did look at tasks as gendered. They were okay with preparing a meal if their wife is engaged, as opposed to the ones in progression. They were helping out in some tasks, but there are some tasks they thought that were gendered. Then for the retrogressive households, they actually had they actually had little to no help from not only the spouse, but also the extended family members. Now, this was the most interesting part that we found, that we actually didn't go out looking for, but that's the beauty of qualitative research, that it's not only spousal involvement that is important, but every family member being involved where they can to help the household graduate, because they are all contributing to the same goal. So when every household member is involved in setting up and selection of goals, but also tracking their progress, they have higher chances of graduating than households whereby maybe only spouses work together without the children, or there's no support at all for the primary participant, who's the lady. Now, that came out strongly because we had a lady who was doing so well before. She separated from her husband, and actually she retrogressed. She has never gone back to progression because the husband's family is not actually pulling their weight. Yet when she gets this support, they come and claim a piece of it, let's say the consumption support and the asset transfer. She was heavily pregnant and abandoned by the husband. But in our culture, when a person is pregnant, that child is for the husband's clan. So we were able to draw these nuances and differences, even between households that are progressing and graduated, that we thought really had no slight difference. But it showed that when you have a holistic involvement of the family, not only at the spousal level, but even at the children and the relatives, at the extended relatives level, if they're in the household, a household has greater chances of graduating and sustaining that graduation even further. So I guess with Joanita's brain and proposal writing, she can dress that up in a better kind of discussion to show that it's important to integrate gender and youth aspects if you are dealing with interventions at the household level. You don't have to assume that if you throw a lot of resources at one person, they will equally spread to have an a positive economic outcome. So that's the high level, but I think we will still be in touch to develop a technical brief or report, delving deeper in the findings as we meet them out. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Derek. And then Jonida, if you have anything to add, feel free, but I'm going to throw a question at you, which you might not be able to answer. And if you can't, just be honest with me, it's okay. So either Jonita or Derek, so these are your findings. And I'm wondering if you have made any decisions about how you might program differently in the future, or are there any adaptations that you've thought about making as a result of this?
Yes. Yes.
Tell us about it.
Adding on to what Derek has said, every time you say you are targeting a woman, the external community is quick to say, now, where are the others? How, how community perceives that. So it was a very good, or it is very good for us to show that, no, much as we are focusing on the woman as the primary participant, we are cognizant of the role of the spouse and all the other participants. From our quantitative data, you would see that because we asked, all our data is able to tell that from Joanita's household, the husband participated in this coaching, maybe session on nutrition, the sister participated, but it will not tell you at the end of the day, what did the husband help Joanita to achieve with that information gotten from that coaching activity. So here we are with this information. And moving forward, like I said, we design a number of programs. Right now, we are working on an extension or a scale for the graduating resilience activity. Now in another location. It will even help us to understand, for example, this study we did with the Congolese community. In Uganda, we have a number of different populations of refugees, but majority are South Sudanese and Congolese. So we want to test it. For example, maybe if we chose to take this very question to the South Sudanese, it might come out differently. So we want to continue with qualitative inquiry in our work. We believe it will help us understand in depth. At the moment, I don't know whether some of you have heard, but in Uganda, we are working on the self-reliance movement. It's a big one and it's catching fire. And we can no longer just say 86% of the targeted households have graduated. We need to understand how graduation has affected them with the deeper transformative a kind of life and within households, not only for households, but also for communities. And we can only contribute to this if we go in depth on the issues that affect these communities, because we know it's not only money or nutrition, sometimes it's the norms. So how do we discuss more in depth on the norms if we do not do qualitative inquiries to have the why and have very vivid answers to this? So we will scale up. We already have another funding from the IKEA Foundation, also doing a similar graduation approach, but with market systems development. So we want to also integrate this and study in depth the issues in there that are affecting the targeted communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita.
Maybe just to add, Jenny, I think the findings are central to communication, because you see, we normally produce gender sensitive communications to kind of change the mindset. But the findings showed that with success that is witnessed at the households, the spouses, the men are no longer afraid to be seen doing some work that is traditionally not done by them, because they see the economic benefit. So I think it's very important in programming and policy to kind of back it up with evidence at such a granular level that, hey, this number of households who share roles at an equal level actually are doing better than other households where roles are strictly gendered. Because with the modern economy, you can't really decide when and who is going to cook the food how, because people are engaged in different businesses and different other roles at different times. So whoever is available pitches in. So it's kind of me, I look at it as more of how we can use it to actually promote advocacy and communication at the local level to have a gradual change in traditionally ingrained norms and gendered roles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate that. So it's 9:20 here where I am right now, which means that I would like to start thinking about transitioning to the question and answer portion of this. I believe Charles needs to drop in 10 minutes. And we have a couple questions for you, Charles. So we're going to start with you. If anybody has any questions for Derek and Juanita, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And we can ask those about the Graduating to Resilience program after we chat with Charles for a minute. So Florence, you had a question for Charles. Do you want to come off mute and share your question with us so that it's not just me talking? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Jenny. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, Charles, thank you so much for sharing. As you were speaking, I just thought about when you are introducing the work that you are doing. You mentioned that you came in with a broad topic, but you worked with the Gaia team to narrow that down. So I was just hoping you can share a little bit with us about that process of like coming out with like a learning question that you ended up answering for your program, and what were some criteria or like some of the things you looked at when you were narrowing the topic or choosing your learning questions?
Thank you so much for that question. I think as our contribution to our submission to participate on this opportunity, we did not have much information in terms of qualitative inquiry. So as a team, our approach was designing or coming up with a tool that possibly we thought we were going to use quantitative tools to inquire on. So during and after the workshop that we did, when we were very sure of the qualitative inquiry processes and learning from the work that has been done already, we had to tweak that topic in a way that it makes it easier for us to do a qualitative inquiry. This meant that we had to ensure that we knocked off or tweaked out a little bit of the quantitative aspect of things that we are looking at. And during that process, we were assisted quite a lot in terms of the experiences from others, in terms of how to come up with a qualitative inquiry learning question. The second thing that I might want to share with you is the fact that the timelines also indicated the kind of questions that we needed to reflect backwards as the project was kind of like closing to an end. So that is the processes we went through in order to tweak our learning question and to make sure that we are very precise, focused on the timelines that we have, and putting us in a situation that we could get better support from the Gaia team than we had anticipated before.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Sabina, are you there? Would you like to ask your question out loud for Charles? And if not, I have it here, so I can ask. There she is, Sabina, go ahead.
Hi everyone. My question was for Charles, as he mentioned about the very new technique for the for collecting the data. So I would like to know what it was. I'm sorry if I have missed it, or he has already mentioned about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that question. Just giving you a little bit of a background is we had not used the qualitative inquiry approach amongst the programs that we have done here in South Sudan. So it was something new to our MIL team, to our programs team, and more importantly, the tools that we decided to go with were new to ourselves, were new to our MIL teams, to our program teams, and so on. So to manage this process, we had to spend a little bit of more time with our data collection teams, with our MIL teams, and ourselves as well, to make sure that everyone understood what a micro-narrative tool is all about. That's one thing. Two, how to differentiate it from a traditional focus group discussion. That was key for us as well. And for example, sharing with you the experience, focus group discussion, we are looking at working with, discussing with the 8 to 10 kind of project participants, and then we narrowed this through a micro-narrative to about 4 to 5 project participants to really understand their story as it happened during the project activities. So these were some of the issues that we faced, and this is where we spend a little bit of more time to ensure that we are doing the correct thing. We are supporting the data collectors appropriately. And out of that process, like I indicated earlier on, we really got a lot of data coming out of it. And just to share with you something on a lighter note is one of our data collectors was saying, I'm now more of a policeman recording a statement from someone who came to complain a case or to the police station, that kind of thing. So it really showed us the new things that they were learning, the ability to ask precise and comprehended questions in order to get the impact of what we're asking about. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Charles. For those of you who are very interested in learning a bit more about those techniques that Charles mentioned, Hope has dropped a link into the chat there, so feel free to check those out. Maybe one more question for you, Charles, before you drop off, and then feel free. There's a question from Anik in the chat. Have you used software for data treatment? If yes, which software? Thank you.
Pardon, I didn't get the question.
Have you used I think it's for data analysis, like a software for data analysis, or yeah, analyzing the data, cleaning the data. Yeah.
We did not use any software. I think that was the biggest challenge that we faced as a team. And through support from Gaia team, they were very flexible to us in terms of going for the option that we chose, and they supported us through the process. We used the Excel to analyze our data in terms of sense-making processes and identifying outliers and so on. It was a new process for us. We tried to go for the software that was an option, but the licensing issues and the training aspect we felt is going to take us a little bit behind against our timelines. So we used the Excel to analyze our data.
Great, thank you, Charles, and thank you so much for being a part of this. If you have to leave, we just want to say thank you very much for participating. Derek, do you have anything to add about? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much for everyone. I have 2 minutes ahead of me, and then I'll drop off thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you. Derek, did you want to add anything about your experience with Max QDA? Because I know that you guys did choose the optional training. So yeah, please feel free to share anything about the using that challenges, or if it was helpful.
Yeah, thank you once again, Jenny. First and foremost, on the whole, it was helpful. But again, it takes us back to my second challenge, the time. We were against time, and even by the time we finished transcribing, the software license that was free to us had expired. But lucky enough for us, since management is really invested in improving our qualitative inquiry skills, we actually procured NVivo 14. So we are currently using that across the program, and we also share it between the programs. So we employ NVivo 14. It's not different from Max QDA, just different nitty-bitty functionalities, but in analyzing qualitative data, it's also a strong and powerful tool. But it was also good to get the skilling from Gaia on Max QDA, though by the time we got it, we had already actually in the process of procuring NVivo. If we knew any better, we would have gone for Max QDA. But by the time we finished transcribing, our license had expired. That was, I think, as we're crossing this year. But the training was intense, and it was hands-on, and it required us to actually go for another training on a Udemy website to kind of be conversant so that you can ask the right question to the facilitator. But Gaia, on a weekly basis, always brought new and experienced personnel to actually take us through the nuances and the steps of qualitative data inquiry. For me, it was kind of a familiar area, though I still learned. But for my team, it was virgin area, and they really enjoyed it because they are proficient in quantitative softwares, analysis, SPSS, SATA, and I mean,
I think Derek might have frozen there. We lost him for a minute. Hopefully he will come back. We have, well, I'm going to ask Joanita if you can answer this question, and if not, I have another question for you actually. But you may not be able to, because I know that Derek is more Mel focused. But the question from Florence is, who did the data collection for your qualitative inquiry? Was it the program team or the enumerators? And do you have any tips for this data collection training? This may be more of a Derek question.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a very huge team on ground. We have two two types of foot soldiers. One is called the coach, and the coach does largely our coaching component of the graduation approach. For those of you who are not very conversant with the graduation approach, you can go and read about it. So there is that component called coaching. Then we have another foot soldier we call the CBT, community-based trainer, who usually does technical skilling. So we needed both of these, and they have been generally the people who collect data. Between you and me, you know that when you go to collect, or like Charles has called it, his team, they felt like investigators, police, CID. You will not get data from these people if you are new to them. So it necessitates that the person who interacts with them on a daily basis asks them. And Derek, with the team of meal personnel, had to train. Of course, we had to train the pass on this information to the meal team, who also cascaded it to these foot soldiers. So they were in charge of collecting data, but with support from another person we call the program officer. So we have a team, but it's very internal. It wasn't external. There are people who have interacted with these households on a daily basis and are very free with them, so they can give them information of, but me, I did not help my wife. Why should I? But if a new person maybe comes, they will say, yeah, I was very helpful. I did A, B, C, and D. But to these people, they will give information as free as possible. So yeah, those are the very guys that collected the data. Yes, an internal team. Derek is back. Welcome
Thank
back.
you, Joanita. Hey, Derek, do you have any tips for Florence on this data collection training of this particular method? How it is that you train the people that collected the data?
Oh, yes. I apologize once again. We have had a power shortage and my network got interrupted. Yes, I think the technique is not doing it at one point in time. The technique is be regular about training, because I think I was not around, but Jonita spoke about it. We do data collection quarterly, and we don't take it for granted that because they are the same people who collected data the other quarter, they are actually conversant with the methods now. So it's always a prerequisite to schedule trainings periodically. It's a learning process. Some forget, some learn better, but everyone goes home with the same platform of knowledge to ensure that the data to collect is of quality. Just to speak about that, also similarly, our data collectors were dealing with micro narratives. Now, we had to actually do a kind of simulation of how deeper you can go when you're using micro narratives. Mostly FDGs, you rely on the participants to kind of cross stories, but micro narratives were done at the household level, and it required the person who's deploying the tool to actually follow and understand that they are the primary tool, not the tool they have. They control where the conversation is going and kind of guide the participant that we are collecting data from to tell their whole story naturally and in an holistic manner. So that's where we got to know about the gendered roles. We knew about them, but we got to know how the households that have graduated transition from that kind of outlook and the reasons for that transition to ensure that they take off on positive gender norms and roles in a household. So yes, I won't say they did it perfectly. There are some transcripts that are lacking. Story is short. You as a qualitative researcher, you can tell that this story has deeper roots, and they should have followed on. But it's a work in progress. So the only advice is it should always be planned and periodic. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Derek. Yeah, that's really interesting because what you're describing there is a very empowered type of data collection, and the data collector really has to be curious enough to follow the storyline, because there's not a prescribed way that you need to be, or questions that you need to be asking. There's a starting point, and then, yeah, you're following that narrative through. So that's really interesting. I have a question for you guys. So I think, you know, one of the requirements of this fellowship is that there's two people working together on it. So one person from monitoring, evaluation, learning, collaborating, learning, and adapting side, and then one person from a more programs perspective or a gender and youth inclusivity focused perspective. And so, you know, that's a partnership. And so I'm curious if anything changed about the way that you work and interact across the different teams in your activity. And I'll leave it that you guys can choose who wants to go first. I don't have a particular person.
I will go first. I think first and foremost, my relationship with Juanita actually got stronger. So actually information is shared ad hocly all the time. So she improves me, I improve her in a certain kind of way, but she's at the table of people who write our strategic plans and programs. So if she has a person she can call to ask for perspective of what's on the ground, that makes it better to kind of frame their discussions or their proposals in a certain kind of way. But one thing I'll say is that our relationship has grown stronger now across the teams. I already said it before. Everyone was very hands off when it comes to qualitative data. They were claiming they have brought an expert and he should work alone, but that's not the way it works, as you have seen the volumes of work that come in. If in a certain month there are 3 data collection exercises, that is overwhelming for everyone. But the current interest and appreciation for qualitative inquiry has actually made it easier for the team to take on tasks that they once abhorred, like transcription, like reading through your transcript to ensure that it's clean, probing in the field, not just asking open-ended, I mean closed-ended questions like they have their quantitative data tools. So the interest in the flow of data is the biggest difference that I've seen, because the transcripts have gone on getting better, but also the willingness and absence of fear in trying out something new, like the micro narratives, because they were like, this looks like an FDG. Why are we doing it with one person? This looks like an in-depth interview. Why does it have a couple of, fewer questions than previously? And I went back and I told them, remember when I told you that you are only as good as your tool? Now this is it. This is time for you to show the rest of the team that you're actually the tool that we have deployed, not this piece of paper. This is a guide. So to me, to see people transition from fearing qualitative data inquiry to embracing it and witnessing it in what they write down and give to me, I think the biggest class. And also with opportunities for this fellowship and the work they saw that we did and what we accomplished in Nairobi, I think it's an incentive for the teams to actually show more interest in coming opportunities. I know we already got an opportunity, but like Jointa said, we have various programs that need this, that we may not be able to reach out. But if we get an application opportunity, we share it out with them and tell them try their luck so that we can have decentralized centers of excellence when it comes to QI. Thank you very much.
Anything you want to add, Juanita?
Yeah, maybe shortly, Derek has said it all, but I want to affirm that in our organization, we try to work closely, both programs and, for example, the MIL team. For sure, previously, MIL was MIL, they counted their numbers while we wrote. But now we have gained a sense of understanding into what they do. They have tried, for example, to teach us what they do, what it means to us, but also us embraced what they do and helped ourselves to understand it, because as part of our work, we are supposed to ensure program quality. So without deep understanding of what is happening and why is it happening, it's hard to improve maybe the quality of our work and be able to answer to our donors in specificity about certain issues. So it's getting better, and we, like Derek has said, we want to spread it across our different programs. We have quite a number of projects. At the moment, we have 20 projects. So if every project does like the graduate into resilience activity, then we know that we are improving on what we are doing and answering questions better. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. As a former Mel manager, that is just, it's music to my ears to hear you say those things. Wonderful. All right, I have one more question, and then we will close out this discussion with you guys. If you could maybe share one piece of advice with participants at this meeting who might be interested in carrying out a similar qualitative inquiry for their project, do you have a piece of advice that you would like to share?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
Yes, I think I want to encourage, for long we have done qualitative and rather quantitative data collection and put out numbers there.
Mhm.
But if we want fundamental change and change that will help us address issues completely so that we do not go back to those very issues with maybe the same donor funding or different donor funding, we have to go into the why things are happening this way and be able to address them well. So I know, of course, it's scary. And like Florence has said, sometimes you will not get the answers you need. But myself, when I first got there, I was like, now I'm finished. They are talking about tools I had never had. I remember Derek stepped out and I said, FGD, we use FGD because that's all I knew. So getting trained, taking it slow, allowing ourselves to learn will help us understand this. It's a must do. So the earlier we obtain this understanding, the better for us. So I want to encourage all of us to try it, to get the learning that is necessary and to practice it. I believe over time it will become like the quantitative, and we will be able to tell the numbers, but also tell the story of why things are happening a certain way. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Derek.
Yes, it's similar to Juanita, and I want to put her fear at ease. It was my first time interacting with photo voice. I think I had only seen it in court cases because I come from a legal background, and we dealt with sexual reproductive health rights cases. And it was very pivotal when it came to defilement. They used to just show minor photos without going into the graphic detail. So it was also interesting for me to kind of transplant that to the research. And I would have also said FDGs if I was in the room. But I have this advice. I believe QI is making a comeback. It's not new. It was the foundation of philosophical research and inquiry. It's just because of historical substance that quantitative came on top. But I think we have to remember that human experience is subjective. We can watch the same movie but not appreciate it the same way. So the more investment you have in understanding human interaction and having a conversation with the person, the easier qualitative research will come. It's a conversation, and the conversation is a kind of boundary where you have to bounce off responses. So I know an exotic skill, I should say, but without making you fear. It's not esoteric. It's something that you can actually learn. But the fact is that you have to practice and you have to go out and see all the new methods that people bring along, because actually qualitative inquiry is becoming simpler if you know.
I think we're losing
Right,
Derek
right.
again, but I will, so we'll go ahead and close out, but I appreciate what Derek, yeah, we lost you a little bit
Yeah.
there, Derek, but thank you so much. I feel like we're getting very philosophical right now at the end of the meeting. I love, I'm going to take away this quote from Derek. You are the tool, not this piece of paper here. I love that. So I'm gonna hold that one close to my heart. You are the tool in terms of qualitative inquiry. So thank you guys so much. I'm sorry Charles isn't here as well to close out, but Joanita and Derek, I appreciate you sharing your experience. And Derek, thank you for making another appearance here in our SLAM community. We really appreciate it. I am going to pass it back over to my colleague, Nicole, to close
You're
out.
welcome.
Thank you, Derek. Bye, Joanita.
Thank you all so much. That was a great conversation. And I was really struck by Derek and Joanita, you're working together and the integrated work of the MEL team with the graduation team and the programmatic work. I love that integration and how you are all working together and collaborating. I think that's also really key. So that was an important takeaway for me as well. So thank you so much to all of our speakers and the audience for an engaging and informative conversation. Before we close out, I want to give Hope with Gaia a few minutes just to tell us about upcoming opportunities to engage in the fellowship. So over to you, Hope.
Thanks so much, Nicole. Thanks, Jenny. And huge thanks to Joanita, Charles, and Derek for the fantastic conversation today. Something I'm really keen to watch going forward is how that finding on spousal support gets really integrated into the upcoming graduation models that we know your organization is working on. So just really excited to hear about that today. Before we leave, I just wanted to mention that our next fellowship cohort, Gaia's next fellowship cohort, will be focused on programs in the Asia region and starting in June with an in-person workshop in July. So if you're interested in receiving an announcement for when that fellowship cohort opens, you can sign up in the link that my colleague is currently putting into the chat. And if you're not in the Asia region, don't worry, you can still sign up using that link and you'll get a notice about future cohorts that will expand to other regions and will be offered in languages other than English, including French in the coming years of Gaia. So please feel free to sign up at that link. It also gets you access to any future communications about what this group of fellows and what other fellows have learned from their projects and how they're applying that learning. So back to you, Nicole, to close us out, and thank you again.
Great, thank you. So as we close, please take some time to fill out the evaluation that Elisa has posted in the chat. Very much in the spirit of this community, we use your feedback to improve these meetings and consider the topic and design of upcoming meetings. So I know you all know the importance of getting your feedback for us to improve this space and keep us going strong. We'll be sending out a follow-up email in the next few days with links to resources that will be helpful for applying some of the approaches shared in today's call. Also, if there were any questions that were not answered, we'll be sure to get those answered and shared with the follow-up email. Our next meeting will be in May, so stay tuned for more information, and please join our listserv to receive the direct invite and helpful learning and adaptive management focused content. As a reminder, that listserv, while we send out informal content, it is a space where you can share your questions and also your learnings with all of us participating here in the meetings, as well as others who are just interested in strategic learning and adaptive management. So just a reminder that that is a free space for conversing. So Elisa is pasting a link in the chat to the SLAM peer community page where you can find the link to join that listserv. So thank you all again for your attendance and appreciation. Please do fill out the evaluation and we look forward to seeing you next time. So thank you all very much.